I was your enemy, but tonight, I'm yours, the alien who chose love over war. The interrogation chamber sterile walls of Detention Block 7 hummed with the low-frequency vibrations that all Xerelian vessels produced. General Kessa Murthan adjusted her neural interface, feeling the familiar cold logic of the collective consciousness wash over her thoughts. Emotions were weakness, strategy was strength, victory was the only acceptable outcome. She stood before the reinforced containment field, studying the human prisoner within. Captain Jake Morrison sat upright despite his injuries, his dark eyes meeting hers with defiant curiosity rather than fear. Most humans cowered when faced with a Xerelian commander. This one seemed almost amused. Another interrogation session, General. Jake's voice carried that peculiar human trait, sarcasm. The collective had warned about this emotional manipulation tactic. I have to say, your hospitality has been lacking. Kessa's mandibles clicked, an involuntary response she quickly suppressed. The collective would not approve of such displays. You will provide the location of Outpost Meridian, human. Your resistance serves no purpose. My resistance serves every purpose, Jake replied, leaning forward despite the energy restraints. It serves hope. It serves the people back home who believe in something greater than themselves. Concepts I'm guessing don't translate well in your hive mind dictionary. For 3 months, these sessions had continued. Initially, Kessa had approached them with clinical detachment, employing standard Xerelian interrogation protocols, pain inducers, memory probes, psychological pressure. Nothing had broken the human's will. More troubling still, something unexpected had begun happening during their encounters. Jake would speak of his home, a place called Colorado, where mountains touched clouds and snow fell like tiny stars. He described his sister's laugh, his father's workshop, the way morning coffee tasted on quiet Sundays. These details served no strategic purpose. Yet Kessa found herself listening, absorbing, experiencing something the collective had no name for. Tell me about fear, Jake said suddenly, disrupting her thoughts. Do your people feel it? Fear is inefficient, Kessa responded automatically. The collective provides certainty, direction, purpose. But what about you? Jake's eyes searched, her elongated features lingering on the bioluminescent patterns that decorated her chitinous skin. Not the collective, you, Kessa. The use of her personal designation sent an unexpected surge through her nervous system. No one addressed individual Xerelians by name. They were units, designations, parts of the greater whole. Yet this human spoke her name as if it carried weight, meaning. I am General Murthan, Classification 7 Alpha 9 of the Xerelian Strategic Command, she said, but the words felt strangely hollow. Jake smiled, another uniquely human expression that conveyed warmth rather than aggression. That's what you are. I asked who you are. The question lingered in the air between them like a charged particle field. Kessa felt something stirring in the deep recesses of her consciousness, something the neural dampeners couldn't quite suppress. It was warm, uncomfortable, alien. You seek to manipulate me with emotional warfare, she said. But even to her own auditory receptors, the accusation lacked conviction. I'm trying to understand you, Jake replied softly. In all our battles, in all this death and destruction, I've never once heard a Xerelian laugh, never seen one cry, never watched one struggle with doubt or hope or longing. You fight like machines. But you're not machines, are you? Kessa's internal systems registered elevated neural activity, increased circulation, heightened awareness, all symptoms the collective classified as dangerous deviations. She should report for reconditioning immediately. She should activate the prisoner's pain inducers and end this dangerous conversation. Instead, she found herself asking, what is laughter? Jake's expression shifted, surprise replacing his steady confidence. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, slowly, he began to explain concepts that had no direct translation in Xerelian: joy, humor, the peculiar human habit of finding lightness even in darkness. As he spoke, Kessa felt the first crack in the foundation of everything she had been programmed to believe. Forbidden feelings. The neural reconditioning chamber glowed with pale blue energy. As Kessa submitted to her mandatory psychological maintenance, Commander Vex Zerdin monitored her brainwave patterns from the control station. his for eyes tracking anomalous readings with growing concern. Your neural pathways show significant deviation. General, he observed, manipulating the holographic display, elevated activity in sectors the collective has classified as problematic. Kessa remained motionless as the reconditioning beams attempted to restore her proper mental state. But something had changed. The warm sensation she'd experienced during her conversations with the human prisoner seemed to have taken root, growing stronger despite the collective's attempts to eliminate it. The human's psychological warfare techniques are more sophisticated than anticipated, she reported, the lie flowing smoothly from her vocal apparatus. Extended exposure may be necessary to develop effective countermeasures. Commander Vex's antennae twitch with approval. Excellent tactical thinking. The High Command has authorized increased interrogation sessions. Break him before the execution. Ceremony in 7 cycles. Execution ceremony. The words sent an unexpected shock through Kessa's system. She had witnessed countless enemy terminations without any systemic response. Why should this human's fate affect her operational parameters later? In the isolation of her quarters, Kessa accessed her personal data banks. For the first time in her existence, she found herself reviewing mission reports not for strategic value, but to understand the humans they had been fighting. She studied their art, their literature, their primitive but fascinating concept of individual identity. The next day's interrogation session began differently. Instead of demanding strategic information, Kessa found herself asking about Jake's life before the war. He spoke of dreams, another untranslatable concept of plans to become a teacher after his military service ended, of a woman named Catherine who waited for his return. You feel affection for this female, Kessa observed. Struggling with the terminology, love, Jake corrected gently. Not just affection. Love is. It's choosing someone completely, accepting all their flaws and celebrating all their strengths. It's caring more about their happiness than your own survival. The description violated every principle of Zurelian existence, yet something in Kessa's consciousness resonated with the concept, like a frequency that had been dormant suddenly springing to life. Your species bonds with individuals rather than the collective whole, she asked. We do both, Jake explained, his restraints humming softly as he shifted position. We love our families, our communities, our world, but it starts with choosing to see someone really see them as more than just their function or purpose. During their subsequent meetings, Jake began asking Kessa questions about her own existence. Had she ever chosen anything for herself? Did she have preferences beyond tactical considerations? What did she dream about during regeneration cycles? The questions were dangerous. They implied individual agency, personal desires, the very concept of self that the collective worked tirelessly to suppress. Yet Kessa found herself unable to stop thinking about them. She began experiencing what humans might call curiosity. She wondered what stars looked like without tactical overlays, what food tasted like when consumed for pleasure rather than mere nutritional efficiency. She found herself studying her reflection in polished surfaces, noticing the unique patterns of her bioluminescent markings, rather than simply maintaining standard appearance protocols. Most dangerously of all, she began to anticipate their conversations. The warm sensation grew stronger each time Jake smiled. Each time he spoke her name with that peculiar human fondness. She realized she was developing what the collective would classify as emotional attachment to an enemy combatant scheduled for public execution. The recognition should have triggered immediate self-reporting protocols. Instead, Kessa made her first truly individual choice. She decided to hide her transformation from the collective. She learned to suppress the anomalous readings, to present a facade of cold efficiency while something unprecedented bloomed in her consciousness. She was beginning to understand what Jake meant when he spoke of love, and the revelation terrified her more than any battle she had ever fought. The choice of rebellion, the execution platform, had been constructed in the central plaza of Outpost Valdris, a testament to Zurelian efficiency and intimidation. Holographic displays would broadcast Jake's termination across human territories, demonstrating the futility of resistance against the collective. General Kessa stood in the command center, watching final preparations with what should have been satisfaction. Instead, She felt something the collective had no classification for: anguish. "The prisoner maintains his defiance," reported Lieutenant Kex Nolter, his neural interface glowing with data streams. "Even standard pain compliance has failed to break his psychological barriers." Through the observation portal, Kessa could see Jake in his holding cell. His injuries had healed poorly. Zerelian medical protocols prioritized functional prisoners over comfortable ones, but his eyes still held that inexplicable human quality: hope. "General Murthan," Commander Vex's voice cut through her observations, "the High Command requires your personal oversight of the execution. The prisoner's resistance has made him a symbol among human forces. His death must be emphatic." Kessa's mandibles clicked in acknowledgement, but internally, something was breaking apart. The warm sensation she'd learned to hide had evolved into something more complex: a burning need to protect, to preserve, to choose Jake's survival over collective objectives. That evening, she accessed Jake's holding cell for what was scheduled to be their final interrogation. He looked up as she entered, and his expression softened with what she now recognized as affection. "Hello, Kessa," he said quietly. "Not general, not designation codes, just your name." Spoken with gentle familiarity. "You will be terminated at sunrise," she informed him, the words feeling like poison in her vocal apparatus. Jake nodded, seemingly unsurprised. "I figured as much. You know, in all our conversations, I never properly thanked you." "Thanked me?" The concept confused her operational parameters: for listening, for asking questions, for becoming more than just my captor. Jake moved closer to the containment field barrier, his hand pressed against the energy barrier. "For becoming my friend." Friend. Another untranslatable concept that somehow made perfect sense. Kessa felt her carefully constructed facade crumbling. "I have been compromised," she whispered, the admission torn from somewhere deep in her consciousness. "The collective would classify my mental state as corrupted, dangerous." "What would you classify it as?" Kessa looked at him, really looked, seeing not an enemy combatant, but an individual who had somehow awakened parts of her that she never knew existed. "I would classify it as alive." The word hung between them like a bridge spanning impossible distances. "Jake Morrison," she said formally, "I have something to confess." He waited, those dark eyes patient and understanding. "I was your enemy," she began, each word a step further from everything she had been programmed to be. "But tonight I choose to be yours, not through capture or conquest, but through something the collective cannot understand or control." Jake's expression transformed, hope blazing brighter than she had ever seen it. "Kessa, what are you saying?" "I am saying that I reject their definition of loyalty. I reject their commands. I reject the execution order." Her bioluminescent patterns flickered with unprecedented intensity as she made the declaration that would mark her as a traitor to everything she had once served. "I choose you, Jake Morrison. I choose us. I choose love over logic, hope over hierarchy, individual will over collective command." The containment field deactivated with a soft hum. Jake stepped forward, his hand finding hers, human flesh against chitinous skin. Two species that should have been incompatible, united by something stronger than biological programming. "The escape route leads through Sector 7, Kessa said, her tactical mind already adapting to their new reality. "I have disabled primary security protocols, but we have perhaps 20 minutes before the next patrol cycle. You're sure about this?" Jake asked, though his grip on her hand suggested he already knew the answer. "I have never been more certain of anything in my existence," Kessa replied. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." Together, they stepped into the corridor, leaving behind two identities: enemy general and prisoner of war, to become something unprecedented: allies, partners, and perhaps something even more profound than either of their species had words to describe. The hunt and heaventh jungle moon of Kepler-44 to see had become their sanctuary and their battlefield. Ancient trees with crystalline bark created a canopy so dense that 3 suns barely penetrated to the undergrowth where Kessa and Jake moved like shadows. Hunted by forces from both sides of the war, Zerelian patrol, to Click's northeast. Jake whispered, his enhanced hearing picking up the distinctive whine of their hover scouts. His human military training had adapted remarkably well to guerrilla survival. while Kessa's intimate knowledge of Zerelian tactics kept them one step ahead of their pursuers. They had been running for 18 days since Kessa's betrayal had triggered a massive manhunt. The collective had branded her a rogue unit requiring immediate termination. Human forces, learning of Jake's escape with a Zerelian general, assumed he had been compromised and marked him as a potential traitor. There, Kessa indicated a natural cave formation ahead. We can shelter until the patrol passes. Inside the cave, bioluminescent fungi provided soft blue light that reminded Kessa uncomfortably of collective interface chambers. Jake sat beside her, close enough that she could feel his body heat, a sensation that had become both comfort and fascination. Do you regret it? He asked quietly, studying the alien patterns that decorated her elongated features. Giving up everything you knew? Kessa considered the question with the thoroughness that had once made her an effective military strategist. She had abandoned rank, species loyalty, the neural connection that had defined her entire existence. She was now classified as mentally corrupted, a dangerous deviation from collective standards. I regret the necessity, she said finally. I regret that love required betrayal, but I do not regret the choice itself. Jake's hand found hers in the dim light, fingers intertwining despite the fundamental differences in their anatomy. Tell me about your home, he said. Before the war, before the collective. What was it like? The question surprised her. I have no memories before collective integration. Zerelian larvae are absorbed into neural networks within hours of hatching. But you must have something, dreams, instincts, feelings that seem to come from somewhere deeper. Kessa closed her eyes, reaching past layers of programming and conditioning. In the silence, she found fragments, the memory of starlight on water, the sound of something that might have been singing, a sense of belonging that had nothing to do with military hierarchy. Sometimes, during regeneration cycles, I experience impressions, she admitted, sensations of flying through atmosphere without mechanical assistance, harmonies that seem to resonate in my bones, the urge to create rather than destroy. Those aren't corruption, Jake said gently. Those are you, the real you. Underneath all their programming, over the following days, as they continued their flight through increasingly dangerous territory, Jake helped Kessa explore these buried aspects of herself. She learned to appreciate the beauty of a sunrise without analyzing its tactical implications. She discovered that Zerelian vocal cords could produce something remarkably similar to human laughter. Most surprisingly, she found that her bioluminescent patterns could shift based on emotional states rather than just communication protocols. Their relationship deepened beyond simple survival partnership. In quiet moments between pursuits, they shared stories, dreams, hopes for a future that seemed increasingly impossible. Jake described his sister's wedding, where he had walked her down the aisle and cried without shame. Kessa spoke of her growing desire to see worlds that weren't battlefields, to meet beings without calculating their strategic value. The turning point came during their third week in hiding, surrounded by a joint Zerelian human patrol that had finally tracked them down. They found themselves back in a clearing, weapons raised against overwhelming odds. Well, Jake said with that peculiar human ability to find humor in dire circumstances, this isn't how I imagined our story ending. It is not ending, Kessa replied, her voice carrying newfound certainty. Jake Morrison, before we face whatever comes next, I need you to understand something. I'm listening. My species does not have concepts for many human emotions, but in learning to love you, I have discovered what it means to be truly alive, not as a unit in a collective, not as a function in a machine, but as an individual capable of choice, growth, and sacrifice. The patrol forces closed in around them, weapons powered and ready. But in that moment, Kessa felt no fear, only a profound sense of completeness that no amount of collective programming could have prepared her for. I love you too, Jake said simply. Whatever happens next, that's real, that's forever. They would face the consequences of their choices together. Revolution of Hearts. The Joint Tribunal convened on Neutral Station Harmony 7, a diplomatic marvel constructed specifically for species interaction. Representatives from both Xerelian Collective and Human Federation sat in judgment of two beings who had committed the ultimate crime, choosing love over loyalty to their respective species. General Kessa Murthan stood in the defendant's chamber, her neural interface permanently severed, her connection to the collective terminated. Beside her, Captain Jake Morrison faced court-martial proceedings for aiding an enemy combatant. Both had become symbols traitors to some, revolutionaries to others. The charges are unprecedented, announced Judge Advocate General Patricia Winters, her human features stern but curious. Treason, desertion, violation of species purity protocols, and collaboration with enemy forces. Across the chamber, High Synthesizer Zig Verthon represented collective interests, his mechanical voice amplified through translation matrices. The corrupted unit designated Kessa Murthan must be terminated. Her deviation represents dangerous contamination of collective consciousness, but something unexpected was happening in the gallery. Xerelian observers, low-ranking military personnel, and civilian contractors displayed unusual behavior. Several had requested individual designation codes rather than collective identifiers. Others had begun expressing what could only be classified as personal opinions about the proceedings. Dr. Rebecca Torres, the human xenopsychologist serving as expert witness, presented her findings to the stunned tribunal. "What we're observing isn't corruption or contamination," she testified. "It's evolutionary awakening. General Murthan's neural patterns show development of individual consciousness previously thought impossible in Xerelian physiology. More shocking still were the intelligence reports filtering in from the front lines. Xerelian units were beginning to display independent thinking, questioning orders, even showing mercy to human prisoners. Several had requested transfers away from combat zones. 2 entire battle groups had declared themselves conscientious objectors. "The defendant's actions have created a cascade effect," reported Colonel Marcus Webb from Human Intelligence Division. "But it's not weakening their military effectiveness, it's changing the nature of the conflict itself." When called to testify, Kessa stood with dignity that transcended species boundaries. "Honored arbiters," she began, her voice carrying newfound warmth, "I stand before you not as a corrupted unit or traitorous general, but as an individual who chose love over programming, growth over stagnation, hope over endless warfare." Her bioluminescent patterns shifted through colors that had no designation in collective databases, emotions that had been suppressed for millennia, finally finding expression. "Jake Morrison did not compromise me. He revealed me the capacity for individual thought, for emotional connection, for personal choice. These abilities were always present in Xerelian consciousness. The collective simply trained us to suppress them." Jake stepped forward, his testimony supporting not just Kessa's actions, but the larger implications of their relationship. "Your honors, what you're witnessing isn't the breakdown of military discipline, it's the emergence of beings capable of making moral choices, rather than simply following orders." The proceedings continued for weeks, but outside the tribunal chambers, the real revolution was taking place. Xerelian soldiers were laying down weapons, not in defeat, but in recognition that they had individual agency to choose nonviolence. Human forces, witnessing unprecedented mercy from their enemies, began responding with their own gestures of compassion. The final ruling came from an unexpected source. A group of young Xerelians who had requested to address the tribunal, led by a former weapons specialist now calling herself Nyx Tertian. They presented a petition signed by thousands of individuals from both species. "We request recognition of the right to individual identity," Nyx declared, her newly independent neural patterns glowing with determination. "The right to choose our own paths, our own relationships, our own definitions of loyalty and service." The tribunal's final judgment was historic. Rather than punishment, they ordered the establishment of an interspecies council to negotiate new terms of coexistence. Kessa and Jake were granted amnesty and appointed as cultural ambassadors, their relationship becoming the foundation for unprecedented cooperation between species. Months later, on the terraformed moon where they had first hidden together, Kessa and Jake established the first integrated settlement, a community where Xerelians and humans lived, worked, and loved as individuals rather than representatives of their species. Was it worth it? Jake asked one evening as they watched three suns set over their new home, their hands intertwined as they had been since that first moment of choice. Cuss's bioluminescent patterns shifted to display what she had learned to call joy. "Jake, Morrison," she said, using the words that had started their transformation, "I was your enemy. But tonight, and every night forward, I am yours, and you are mine, not by conquest or programming, but by the conscious choice to love beyond boundaries." Their union had not just ended a war, it had begun an evolution. The galaxy would never be the same.